fourth and final lesson on the South Mountain Motors project. In the first lesson, we set up the MVVM design pattern and created our data service and our data class. Lesson number 2, we created the title page and the inventory page. Lesson 3, we created the add page. In this one, we're going to set up the details dialog, which really probably should have been named details page. So let's go over to the DetailsDialog XAML. In the XAML code, we will set our background color to black, our title to details, and the shell background again will be maroon. We're going to create a border with a stroke thickness of 8 and a binding of stroke color. This will allow us to change the color on the detail if we wanted, and then setting the background color also being bound to MyBG. I didn't actually modify either of those properties in my code, but it's set up that you could. Vertical stack layout, horizontal options of fill, vertical options fill, and a margin with 10 at the top. And then inside that is another vertical stack layout, and we're going to set the margin to 5 all the way around, and binding context will be bound to my car. And that's going to be the car that we've selected. Inside that then is a label with the text bound to the YMM property of my car, that's the year, make, model, and setting the options in color and font there. Then a horizontal stack layout, and here we'll show the miles in a label, again binding to miles. I'm going to set the string format so that we're seeing a comma, so if it's more than 999 miles, we're going to have a comma at the thousands place. And then another label bound to the price and setting the string format there to show currency with no decimals. Set the colors to light gray and red, and the fonts and the options, the end of the horizontal stack layout, and then below that is going to be our image of the car that's been selected. Now I have an X name there of image car, or IMG car. That was just a copy and paste from the previous image that we used in the add page, and I put the X name there just kind of out of habit. Don't use that, you can remove that. Width request of 364 and a height request of 216. Again, we're going to keep that 16:9 ratio. We want something fairly big that's going to kind of fill the screen. The aspect is aspect fit. And set the horizontal options and the background color to black. Then I have an image source subset here in which we're going to bind the URI to the image URL. So that's the text of the site. We're going to use that in showing the display, and then have a cache validity set up for 3 days. Then we have our grid with row definition of just an asterisk and a column definition of an asterisk. So it's just a grid with one row and one column. I used a grid here because grids allow you to layer things on top of one another, and I'm going to create a custom dialog a little bit later. Next, I'll create a vertical stack layout with the binding context set back to that my car so that all of the children views can relate back to my car, and we can specify the properties for our binding to that object. So we're going to lay this out just like we did in the add page view. We'll have horizontal stack layouts containing a label and an entry, and that entry is going to have a binding to each of the properties. The first one here is the make, and the next horizontal stack layout is for the model, and its entry has a binding to the model property of our my car. Third, we have the year and a binding to the year property. Next, we have one for miles, binding to the miles property. The price horizontal stack layout, binding to price, and the image URL, which is going to display the text link to that image, so we're binding to image URL property. And then scrolling down, after that vertical stack layout, we have a border. And that border, I've set the background color to dark orange, the horizontal options to center, and the is visible I bound to a dialog visible property. What we're going to do here is create a custom dialog box. One of the problems I encountered is I was going to try to use mop-ups. The mop-ups didn't work with the VM because it's not a content page. So I'm setting a border here that's going to be the outside of our dialog box, and set the width and request to 320 and 200 and gave it a stroke of white. The vertical stack layout then inside of that is going to contain a label. Let me make these so that you can actually view these a little bit better. So now scrolling all the way across. The label is going to have a text of please confirm, and I'm also binding it to the dialog visible. It's going to be a Boolean value. So all of these items are bound to that property. And that way we can hide and show all of them at once. Then we have a label below that. Are you sure you want to delete this record? This is for confirming our delete of the car. And then a horizontal stack layout with two buttons. One has a text of confirm, the other one has text of cancel, and they are both bound to commands. One's going to be the confirm delete command, and the other one's a cancel delete command. So that together with my border is the custom dialog that initially is going to be hidden, but we can show it as there's a need. So when they click the delete button, we'll confirm that they actually want to delete. And I do that just in case somebody accidentally clicks the delete button. It's always good to confirm that before you delete their data. And then finally we have a horizontal stack layout with buttons for update, return to list, and delete. The update button has a command of update car command that's bound to. The return to list has a command that's bound to return to list command, and the delete button has a binding to delete record command. And I changed the colors a little bit and sizes on those a little bit to emphasize the return to list. In most cases, that's what we're going to do. And that then concludes the end of our XAML code. If we jump over to the code behind, as we did before, we're going to have our ViewModels folder that we're in the directive, and then our binding contacts will be new DetailsDialog, and we're going to pass it the appshell.car service. Next, let's look at the DetailDialog VM.cs code. And again, we're using our community toolkit, so we have the directives up there, as well as our models folder and the data services. Our class is a partial class, public partial class, that's implementing the observable object interface. We have an observable property of my car, which is of type car, and we're going to use that for binding the various properties in the details. And we have observable properties for my BG, which is going to be the background, and a stroke color observable property that's up to white. And then observable properties for edit enabled and dialog visible. And those are Booleans. Remember that dialog visible is going to be our custom dialog. And then of course we need to include our car service. So I have an update service that is a car service. And that update service in the constructor will be set to the car's VM that is passed to it. We're also going to set my car equal to the inventory page VM.sharedCar. Now remember, I set that up as a non-observable property so we could share the value through the public static variable. And in light of that, we need to use then the onPropertyChanged name for my car to notify the view that the property has changed. We have several relay commands here. The first one's update car. We're going to call update current car as a method, and again I did that because the update current car is an asynchronous method. I don't think I can make the relay command an asynchronous method, so that we're going to call an asynchronous method. Doing the same thing for return to list, I'm going to call a method called dismiss. The delete record, I'm simply going to change the dialog visible to true. That's that observable property that will show the custom dialog that we created in our XAML. We have the confirm delete. We're going to call a method called deleteCar, and our cancel delete, which will again set the dialog visible equal to false. So here's our methods for dismiss, update current car, and delete car. So the dismiss method, we're simply going to do a pop async to go back to the previous page. For the update, we're going to take my car and call the get YMM method to get that year, month, and model, and set that YMM property then. for my car, and then we're going to update our service by calling update car async and passing it my car. For the delete car, we're going to await the update service.delete car async, passing it my car. Set our dialog visible to false to make that dialog go away. We're also going to call the dismiss method to return to our inventory list page. That's our detailed dialog view and ViewModel. Let's take a test drive in the emulator. Having created the DetailsDialog View and ViewModel, we can now click on the View Inventory. Click on a car. It'll bring up the Details Dialog page, and we'll see the image with the information about the car, and then we can edit any of these if we wanted. So let's say we want to drop the price down to $4,000. So I can come in behind the price, and we'll just delete, make that 4,000, and say update, and I can return to the list, update my list, and now it shows $4,000 as the price. We added that Ford Ranchero in the previous video. Let's say we sold it and I'm going to get rid of it from our inventory. So I'm going to click on it, and here I could choose delete, and I can confirm or cancel. If I click cancel, nothing will happen. But if I go back to delete and I say confirm and update the list, the Ford Ranchero now is gone. It's been deleted from our SQLite database. Everything seems to be working on that page. I would also encourage you at this point probably to run through everything again, just test it, make sure that all the pages are navigable, add another car in, make some changes to cars, delete some cars, make sure everything works. That concludes our South Mountain Motors MVVM project. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the .NET MAUI Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.